So a while back I made a video on Buzz Lightyear Star Command for the Dreamcast. After finishing it, it made me realize that I have a lot of old games from my childhood that I haven't played in a while. And for one reason or another, I never got to go and finish those games back in the day. And since the Dreamcast was probably my earliest and most vivid memories of a console, that's where a lot of these unfinished games are from. It was a lot of fun to go back and finally see everything Buzz had to offer, even if some of it kinda sucked. So I thought it would be fun to jump back in and try another game that I only have some faint memories of. And the cover that always sticks out to me the most is this little fella, SLAVEZERO. Jesus, look at this box. Back before GameStop, which was behind EB Games, my brother and I got our new games from Blockbuster. When we went to go get movies or whatever as a family, we would also occasionally get a game. But I remember we would oftentimes try and hide the games so my parents wouldn't think to take them back after the rental period was up. I think we hid Kirby 64 for about a month before they started to finally get calls about it. We got grounded for that one. But you're looking at the sole survivors from our Dreamcast Blockbuster games here. GTA 2, Dead or Alive 2, Arrow Wings 2 Airstrike, and SLAVEZERO. I'm sure at some point my parents just ended up having to pay for these games, but I don't know. So I was about to write down and say that I have very fond memories of SLAVEZERO, but if I'm being honest, I have no real memories of this game that I can recall. I just remember you control a big robot, and I just remember running around the first level and encountering some enemies. I really have no idea what was driving me back to this game. Maybe I had some profound time with SLAVEZERO and I've been waiting until now to unearth and discover it. So let's see what this baby's all about. It appears that there is only darkness ahead for this fella. I sure hope that's not foreboding. Okay, so the game begins with a text crawl of information and world building. I didn't really plan on investing much into the story here, and the presentation is a little on the archaic side. But don't get me wrong, there are several older games that had no problem telling an entertaining story, but this ain't no Chrono Trigger, sonny. But after that, the actual game begins with you being dropped onto a grungy, futuristic metropolis highway. I used this time to get acquainted with the controls and ooh boy, they're horrid. So jumping the gun a little bit, this game is pretty challenging, but I never felt challenged due to a clever enemy placement or fun platforming. No, the challenge in SLAVEZERO comes from the control, or rather lack thereof. Your offensive abilities include your main weapon on the right trigger, missiles on the left, and this miserable stomp maneuver that does nothing is activated with down on the D-pad. You aim all of these attacks with the analog stick, and it works. For the most part. But this is where things get a little tricky. Your movement is dictated by the face buttons. You walk forward with Y and slowly stumble backwards with A. Then you're able to strafe left and right with the corresponding X and B buttons. And your titular jump button in this action platformer is up on the D-pad. Yes, it's very bad. Your forward movement is dictated by where your reticle is facing, so I'm sure you can imagine how awkward it is to get around and fight. Not to mention the backward shuffle you do is the most frustrating thing when you need to actually retreat from enemies. And you can change the control schemes, but not to anything any more useful. All of the variations suck, so I just turned up the sensitivity so I could go ahead and get used to it. As I moved on, I immediately start to see why this control scheme sucks so much, and later on down the road, I did start to get more comfortable with it. But that doesn't make it any less despicable. So gun combat became a bit unreliable and imprecise, as I'm sure you can only imagine. But then while fighting with the horrible movement controls, I walked up close to an enemy to get a better shot, and I crushed him with my hand. I learned that early on in the game, your default weapon is much weaker than the standard melee attack you perform when you attack enemies in their face. So my combat experience quickly devolved from awkward to look at shootouts to awkward to look at robot boxing matches. Eventually these boxing matches became obsolete when you find better weapons and upgrades scattered about, but it's the optimal strategy for a chunk of your adventure in the beginning. And as for reliable as the melee attack is, it oftentimes gets you killed too. And death in this game is especially frustrating. So in old school fashion, there are no in-stage checkpoints in each mission. You do the stage in one take or it's back to the start with you. The only other asshole game that comes immediately to mind that does this is called Comix Zone. And that's an old Sega game too. Damn Sega, you were stingy little men back in the day. But when you eventually die, you will be reset at the beginning of the level. That means you lose any upgrades you might have found, all the enemies respawn, and of course, all of your progress from the previous run is lost. It makes it to where you remember exactly where everything is in that level. You better take notes, baby, because your ass is going to be coming back through here a lot. And honestly, the nature of this game's checkpoint system makes each run have some legitimate weight to it. Those moments where you're extremely low on health, but you know there's a health pickup right around the corner that'll save you are very tense. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, it also makes it extremely frustrating when you get knocked out by something stupid or unfair or something that's just... What? It frustrates you and it makes you say stuff like, "Ugh, I just want to get past this thing." So that's what you do. You just start ignoring everything in the level, or at least everything you can ignore. Why bother with something that doesn't give you XP or V-Bucks, am I right? I can't tell you how many times I died at the end of a level a few times and was like, yeah, I've seen enough. So I just speed through everything until I get to the end again. And back on the way these missions are structured, I pretty much just learned to save my game after every cutscene that played out. Because each mission is broken up into those 3 or 4 stages. I learned to just rush to the end of the stage when I felt like I had learned it enough, and save at the beginning of the next one for a pseudo checkpoint system for myself. But then at the end of the last stage for mission 1, I found myself in front of a boss. Not a wall with a health bar like I've been accustomed to fighting, but another big robot. And it turned into a joke. I just ran up and started punching it. I don't know why it was stunned so bad, but I got past it with barely a scratch on me. But oh well, I beat another boss wall and finished the first mission, complete with cutscenes with no voices or sound effects.
You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
The next mission honestly isn't very different visually from the first. Come to think of it, this entire game has no interesting levels that stick out from what the first level establishes. The 2 locales you'll be seeing in SLAVEZERO are cities and sewers. Now you might get a city at night, or some scaffolding, or a combination of sewers and cities, but there's only one level that I can think of that actually has some unique architecture, and I'll let you know when we get to that. And when the level looks bad, the level really looks bad, and it just makes you shake your head. And since we're on the subject of form, let's transition into the function of some of these levels, because some of them are ridiculous. I cannot tell you how many times I got caught on the side of a piece of geometry, had shootouts that I was unsure of what would protect me, or was disappointed by something that I thought was a secret but turned out to be something stupid. Quick tangent, there are sometimes these secret paths and hidden goodies, but they are either too hard to see or not worth the challenge of getting. No! This level sucks so much. I can't see anything, and there are these stupid spider things that won't stop! I can't get good cover on them because I can't see, and these controls make me want to cry into my soft little hands. That's it! I'm done! To my utter shock and bewilderment, there is a version of SLAVEZERO on PC. Accolade, the same people who are responsible for everyone's favorite annoying-ass Bobcat, are actually the developers of the original PC game. Yes, that's right, SLAVEZERO was originally going to be a PC exclusive game, but Sega came and offered them a contract they couldn't refuse towards the end of the game's development cycle, and the deal to make it a Dreamcast launch title was solidified. This was actually really disheartening for the development team as time marched on, because they had to spend their marketing budget for the PC game they'd poured so much love into on cramming the game into an inferior machine. Things like more lively cities, better lighting, higher polygon counts, actual music. Yeah, I forgot to mention, the Dreamcast game just didn't have a soundtrack. And much more were all just omitted. This meant that the PC version, which was already complete, had to be kept on ice for around 9 months to wait on the Dreamcast and PC simultaneous release that Sega wanted. It ultimately led to no one knowing about the PC version due to no marketing, and the Dreamcast version failing due to strict deadlines and unattainable goals for inferior hardware. Due to these circumstances, SLAVEZERO has really gotten buried by the passage of time. But after a decade, I'm actually excited to see what the original version for this game was supposed to be. And for $7, this was an easy choice for me. Okay, so to begin, we can actually change and customize our controls now. It feels so good to be able to have free reign over what buttons do what, and I feel like I'll be better equipped to deal with the challenges for sure, but I'll still go with medium difficulty. Right away, this game feels so good and natural with a mouse and keyboard. I can tell why it felt so weird on the Dreamcast now. The game was never designed with a controller in mind. You have a level of pinpoint accuracy that wasn't possible on the console version. It is night and day. Oh, and speaking of night and day, have you seen how you can literally see now? Everything is properly lit and clearly defined. All the little details are here, like the little people running around and the cars that react to you, and you can even pick them up. It's great!
Never defeat the human spirit! You'll never defeat God!
Even though it's still quite obvious that it's a 1999 3D game, it's still such a sight for sore eyes though. Back in the Dreamcast version, the bosses you fought were typically a challenge that consists of jumping and staying still so you don't waste any ammo. This was mostly due to your limited control. Take Mission 3's boss for example. I had to stand still and hammer him with rockets until he got enough pot shots in that warranted me needing to wander around the arena and grab a health power-up or two. But in the Steam version, I'm strafing here and there, jumping rope with this idiot's lasers and feeding him lead by the gallon. It feels like a real test of dexterity and skill. It was actually rewarding because I felt like I had bested the game, not broken it. Plus, now that I can see, some of the designs for these bosses are actually really cool. I especially like the spider boss guy. It was really cool to discover that when he takes enough damage, his arm falls off, and you can scramble to go grab it and use it for the rest of the game. It's an awesome weapon that has amazing splash damage and barely uses any energy. And like I said, there are some really interesting bosses in the game, but that doesn't excuse the amount of cheap bullet sponges for bosses towards the end of the adventure. Some of the encounters, especially towards the latter half of the game, have very annoying attacks that do a lot of damage very quickly. It's pretty lame when you're in the middle of a fight and you get schooled almost instantly due to some cheap lasers. That's doubly stupid because it makes it seem like it was made to be a beginner's trap. There is no way that you know they have an instant kill laser, so it serves as nothing but a cheap death. And sometimes it's not even just the bosses that makes me want to pull my hair out. A lot of the times it's the stupid as hell enemies they decide to put in dumb places. There are a lot of frustrating enemies in this game, but they can usually be overcome if you're not trying to just charge through everything. Contrary to what I said up there. As a wise man once said, most enemies are fine and serve as nothing more than hostile dispensers for certain types of ammunition. Some rockets, some machine guns, some green thingies, but consistently I have rage-inducing encounters with the larger enemies. In particular, when they are perched atop sniper positions and have an attack that does nothing in terms of damage, but shoves you into the depths for an instant kill.
Knockback is stupid!
Those are where my most intense frustrations come from when enemies are the subject of discussion. But even though the control is so much better and everything about the game just feels right, there are still core problems with SLAVEZERO that are still present in this version. It's still very easy to fall off ledges and want to scream because of it, not to mention all of the glitches. The console version had its fair share of glitches, but I just had the pleasure of playing through more of the PC release. And oh my god. Like right here, this elevator takes you up to a very challenging boss that already has its fair share of challenges in the stage preceding it. I had done a good job in collecting health and ammunition for the fight, and I was ready. But the elevator that takes me up glitched out and wouldn't come down to get me, forcing me to restart the checkpoint and play the entire stage of madness again. Some enemy AI just has a hard time existing. Collision detection is a plague. Like, seriously, a plague. Enemies sometimes don't respect physics and shoot through stuff, especially in really inopportune times. But I would be lying if I was to say that all these glitches were bad. No, there was one that actually made up for all the other strife and heartache this game had put me through. So after conquering the entire game, I made it to the final level. I had no idea what to expect because it had been brutal up to this point. I had to reevaluate my strategy several times, go out of my way to keep the good rocket launcher because the game constantly is trying to give me this upgrade that sucks. But I finally made it to the end of this journey. And right off the bat, I love how this level looks. It's 100% the most visually unique mission in the game. The Chinese palace aesthetic is super nice. It makes me wish that we had cooler set pieces to look at throughout this adventure. Like, how cool would it have been to have a jungle level, or an Arctic themed level, or a daytime version of a city? Listen to me talk about different kinds of cities. I have Stockholm Syndrome for this game, I swear. But back on track, the final level pulls no punches. It hammers you with everything it has, which is fitting. I expect that. But that's when something I didn't expect happened. Just as I was being killed, I grabbed onto a ledge by complete accident, leaving me with -1 health. I thought, dang it, I'll just have to give it another go, I guess. Nope. I was able to let go of the ledge and continue on my way. The camera was fixed to the death cam's angle, but I was still able to fire at enemies and harm them. But I was invincible. Still susceptible to knockback, but I guess that's just the price to pay for godhood. So I tried to progress, but the camera was making it a bit tough. So I wondered what would happen if I tried resetting the camera by pausing. Holy moly, it worked. I'm invincible walking around the final level. And oh my god, I made it to the final boss like this. This is insane. This glitch is something else, you know. I never thought I would find the one that... Oh. No. No, come on, that's totally stupid. You can't give me the power of the world and then have that world swallow me up. It's unfair and it's prejudice. Oh well. I guess I can give it a try or two before I quit. What? I'm still Ooh! Even after death I remain immortal? I took down the final boss and finally completed SLAVEZERO on the normal difficulty. I wouldn't call my relationship with this game pointless or tumultuous by any means. After the way it just ended? Are you kidding me? That was almost the equivalent of the supersonic boss fight from Adventure 1 levels of fun. But I don't think I'll be coming back to it anytime soon. As much fun as some of the levels are, the combat does begin to get repetitive with a finite pool of recycled enemies and obstacles. And the levels are very repetitious and linear. If you've played through them once, then you've seen what they have to offer. Can I recommend SLAVEZERO to you? On the Dreamcast, hell no. Did you see the same footage I saw? Do not waste your time. It's due to that monstrosity that we'll more than likely never see a sequel to this game. But the PC version is a different story, however. I think that it's a fun time, honestly. It shows its age at times, and its somewhat archaic design choices poke out from time to time, but it's still fun and bound to keep you on your toes. Just try not to play it on hard like I did. Oh, and there's a multiplayer mode that sounds like it could be a lot of fun for you and some friends if you all have $7 laying around. I wish I could experience it, but you know, no internet, so, yup. And $7 is all you've pretty much got to lose if this sounds like a fun time for you and your group. And what's an antiquated old mess that you can't help but love? I know this is only one more on my list of many. Let me know in the comments below though. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching, so thanks for stopping by and have a great day.